I'll give you $200,000 if you serve me in Arabic. The words cut through the velvet hum of the Sapphire Room, Dubai's most exclusive restaurant, where golden chandeliers glittered like captured suns above the city's elite. For a heartbeat, even the violins stopped playing. Every gaze turned toward the waitress standing by the magnate's table. Her name tag read Amara Charles. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, but her hands tightened ever so slightly around the tray. Across from her sat Khalid Al-Fahim, a man whose fortune was only matched by his arrogance. The 45-year-old real estate tycoon leaned back in his chair, his watch flashing beneath the chandelier's light. "You're from Africa, right?" he said, his voice dripping with mock amusement. "Then you probably don't know Arabic." Laughter rippled across the table. Khalid reached into his briefcase and tossed a stack of bills onto her silver tray. The money fanned out like taunting wings, the sound of it hitting metal echoing through the marble hall. "If you can serve me in proper Arabic, you get all this," he said, smirking. "Otherwise, you'll kneel and apologize for wasting my time." His friends chuckled. "Make sure it's not Google Translate Arabic," one of them sneered. Around them, other guests pretended to focus on their meals, though every pair of eyes in the room watched. The moment had transformed from dinner into a spectacle, a public humiliation served with dessert. Amara's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. She had worked in places like this for 2 years, places where men looked through her, not at her. Men who assumed a black waitress couldn't possibly be educated, couldn't possibly belong in this gilded room. "And if I do speak it, sir?" she asked softly. Khalid's grin widened, savoring the challenge. "Then the money's yours." The violinist lowered his bow. The waiters froze mid-step. The entire restaurant hung in silence, waiting for her to break. But inside, Amara wasn't trembling. She was remembering. The scent of Cairo's streets, the lecture halls of Oxford, her father's voice reciting proverbs about dignity. Beneath the glitter and mockery, something in her gaze shifted, from service to defiance. For her, this wasn't about money, it was about memory. Welcome to Life in Stories, where every tale reveals a truth, every moment carries a lesson, and every voice deserves to be heard. If you believe in the power of storytelling, in courage, dignity, and the beauty of human resilience, you're in the right place. Subscribe, settle in, and let the stories speak. The Sapphire Room glittered like a secret carved from light. High above downtown Dubai, it sat on the top floor of the Al Fahim Tower, a restaurant so exclusive that even its reservation list had a waiting list. Every inch of it was curated to impress. Crystal chandeliers like frozen constellations, marble floors veined with gold, and a panoramic view of the city shimmering beneath the desert night. The air hummed with the quiet symphony of money, laughter too polished to be genuine, conversations that floated between languages and currencies. Waiters moved with choreographed precision, their uniforms crisp, their smiles mechanical. Each gesture was calculated. The silent pour of wine, the subtle bow of the head, the soft glide of shoes on marble. To work here was to serve perfection, or at least the illusion of it. At the center table, beneath the grandest chandelier, sat Khalid Al-Fahim. 45, sharp suit, sharper smile. His cufflinks bore his initials in diamonds, KAF, a reminder that everything in this room, from the wine list to the staff's patience, existed to orbit him. Born into privilege, tempered by ambition, Khalid had built an empire of steel and glass across Dubai. People called him charming. They also called him cruel, though never to his face. He was the kind of man who mistook fear for respect. Tonight, surrounded by investors and heirs, his charm was turned up like a spotlight. The table roared with laughter, champagne flutes clinking in perfect rhythm, Deals were being made with every toast. Women in designer abayas leaned closer when he spoke. Men in tailored suits nodded when he smirked. Khalid was a man who commanded rooms and demanded submission. That was when Amara Charles approached. Her steps were quiet but steady, her black uniform immaculate. The gold name tag on her chest read Amara C. Her hair was tied into a neat bun, revealing a face that radiated calm intelligence. Her eyes, soft brown but sharp with awareness, took in the scene like a scholar studying a page. She placed a tray of hors d'oeuvres before them, her movements graceful. "Your order, sir," she said softly, her accent faintly lilting, a melody shaped by many countries. The words were polite, perfectly enunciated, yet somehow her poise made Khalid pause. He glanced up, lips curving into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're new." "Yes, sir," she replied. "I started last week." "Where are you from?" he asked, already knowing the answer would entertain him. "Nigeria," she said. The corner of his mouth twitched, that small, dangerous spark of amusement. "Ah," he said, leaning back. "Then you probably don't know Arabic." The table chuckled. One of his associates, a portly man with a red tie and the loud confidence of inherited money, added, "Maybe she knows some words from TikTok?" Laughter erupted. Even the violinist at the corner faltered for a second before continuing his song. Amara's fingers tightened subtly around the tray, but her face remained composed. Khalid wasn't done. He thrived on eyes. The crowd, the performance, the unspoken agreement that his jokes were law. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a sleek leather envelope, and withdrew a thick stack of cash. US dollars, crisp and green. He fanned them in his hand like playing cards, then let them fall onto the table with a flutter that cut through the laughter. The sound echoed, soft but obscene. "I'll give you $200,000, he said, his voice carrying through the hush that followed. "If you serve me in Arabic." The room fell still. Forks hovered mid-air. A glass clinked softly against marble and rolled, unheeded, across the floor. Amara blinked once. "Sir?" she said, as if she hadn't heard him right. Khalid smiled wider, sensing the attention. "You heard me. If you can take my order and serve me in proper Arabic, this is yours." He gestured to the money, spread across the white linen like bait. His companions grinned. "Make sure it's not Google Translate Arabic," one jeered. Another raised his phone, already recording. The challenge had become entertainment, a social spectacle. Someone whispered, 200,000, just to speak. Or to fail, another murmured back. Amara's pulse quickened, but her expression didn't betray it. She looked at the cash, at the faces waiting for her to shrink. Inside her, something sharp flickered, the old mix of anger and restraint. The knowledge that to survive in rooms like this, she had to swallow her pride one polite smile at a time. She set the tray down. "And if I do?" she asked quietly. Khalid's eyes gleamed. "Then it's yours. Every dirham. And if I fail? Then you'll apologize to me? On your knees," he said, with mock sweetness. Gasps, soft but audible. Even in a city that prized arrogance, his words had crossed a line, yet no one dared to intervene. Not the maitre d', not the staff who had seen worse and learned silence. The restaurant, for all its elegance, had turned into an arena. Khalid leaned back, folding his arms, utterly certain of his dominance. "Come now," he said. "Surely you don't want to disappoint us." Laughter again, brittle, uneasy this time. The investors exchanged looks, unsure whether to enjoy or escape the scene. The music stopped altogether. Amara's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The chandeliers above blurred into halos of light. 2 years of serving tables, of bowing to men who spoke to her as if she were invisible, collapsed into this moment. But beneath the weight of humiliation, there was something else. Control. She realized she had the power to decide how this story would end. He had offered her a stage, not knowing she'd been trained for one long before she wore this uniform. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Dignity isn't given, child. It's chosen. Amara inhaled slowly. She met Khalid's eyes. The laughter faded. The air tightened. Every camera phone tilted toward her. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Even Khalid's grin faltered for half a second. An instinctive awareness that something had shifted. She straightened her posture. Her voice, when it came, was steady, calm, controlled. I accept. Silence. It spread through the sapphire room like a ripple over still water. Khalid's smirk froze halfway into a laugh that never came. Around him, the investors exchanged uncertain glances, sensing the tension beneath her composure. For the first time that night, it wasn't Khalid commanding the room. It was her. Amara picked up the silver tray again, her chin lifting slightly as she added, "Shall I begin, sir?" The chandelier light caught her eyes, and for a brief electric instant, Khalid saw something that unsettled him. Not defiance exactly, but knowledge. The quiet confidence of someone who had already mastered the challenge long before it was issued. The crowd murmured, phones lifted higher, and in that hush, as if the city itself leaned closer to listen, Khalid al-Fahim, the man who bought everything he desired, suddenly wasn't sure if he was still in control. For a heartbeat, Amara stood perfectly still. The sapphire room's glittering opulence blurred into a wash of color. The gold, the marble, the diamond shimmer of laughter that wasn't laughter at all. Her reflection rippled faintly in the mirrored wall behind Khalid's table. A waitress. That was all they saw. But inside, the woman holding that tray was remembering another life. She breathed in slowly, centering herself. The scent of saffron, rosewater, and ego filled the air. Khalid's friends whispered behind their hands, phones angled discreetly toward her. Somewhere above the hum of the air conditioner, she could hear the faint tick of her own heartbeat. 3 years earlier, that sound had meant something entirely different. Back then, she was Dr. Amara Charles, lecturer in linguistic anthropology at Oxford University, a name that carried quiet prestige, a title earned by obsession and sleepless years. Her office had been her kingdom, maps of dialect families, walls lined with books whose spines carried the ghosts of civilizations. A coffee-stained copy of Language as Memory, How Speech Preserves Dignity. Across cultures lay on her desk, her dissertation turned publication. She spoke 7 languages fluently: English, Igbo, French, Arabic, Swahili, Spanish, and Italian. Her students used to joke that she could order coffee in half the world and still correct the grammar of the barista. But Arabic, that had been her love. Its music, its rhythm, its infinite shapes of respect and poetry. She'd spent 2 years at the American University in Cairo, wandering through old libraries, absorbing the language like light through stained glass. Her research traced the evolution of Arabic dialects from pre-Islamic poetry to modern Gulf idioms, a living river of heritage flowing through time. Her favorite line, the one she'd written on the first page of her thesis, came from a Bedouin proverb. Language is the bridge of honor between hearts. She used to say it in her lectures, her voice filled with conviction. Language, she'd tell her students, isn't just communication, it's dignity made audible. Then the call came from Lagos. Her father, Chibuzor Charles, had suffered a severe stroke. A bookseller for 40 years, he'd built their family shop, The Bridge, on a foundation of words. His shelves had been her childhood, the smell of paper, the rustle of pages, the laughter of customers debating poetry. But when he fell, the world she knew collapsed with him. Medical bills rose faster than hope. The insurance failed, Grants she'd applied for couldn't arrive fast enough. In a blur of panic and devotion, Amara packed up her life in Oxford. She promised her department she'd return in a year. She never did. At first, she believed she could continue her work remotely, translating texts between hospital visits. But soon the reality was brutal. The money ran out, the university replaced her, and her visa expired. She found herself in Dubai, a city where accents could buy or break a person, with no network, no tenure, and a desperate need for income. The only job she could get was at a luxury restaurant, the Sapphire Room. The first time she tied the apron around her waist, she almost laughed. A doctorate in anthropology reduced to balancing plates for men who'd never finished their meals. But she swallowed the bitterness. Every tip, every hour, every forced smile paid for her father's treatment back home. Every shift was an act of survival disguised as service. There were nights she went home and spoke aloud to herself in every language she knew, not to practice, but to remember she was still her. Bonsoir. Habari. Masa al-khair. Each word was a thread keeping her dignity from unraveling. And every morning, before she left for work, she touched her father's photograph and whispered, "Language is the bridge of honor between hearts." It became her prayer. Now, standing once more in the halo of a chandelier, she felt that bridge tremble inside her. The marble floor beneath her feet might as well have been a classroom podium. The eyes staring at her weren't students, they were spectators. But the feeling was the same, a stage, a test, a chance to speak truth through words. Khalid's voice snapped her back to the present. He laughed, a booming, careless sound that ricocheted through the restaurant. "Well," he said, gesturing at the money, "you'll need more than good manners to earn that, my dear." The men at his table smirked, clinking glasses as if the outcome were already decided. To them, she was an extra in their story, a prop in their theater of ego. Amara's eyes flicked briefly toward her reflection in a nearby mirror. The uniform, the name tag, the obedient stance, all of it was a costume now. Beneath it stood a scholar, a daughter, a woman who had walked through loss and kept her poise intact. Her pulse slowed. She drew a breath deep enough to anchor her. Let him speak, she thought. Soon, silence will be my victory. She lowered her gaze politely as though conceding defeat, though inside her mind 1,000 Arabic phrases fluttered like wings. Cairo Arabic, Levantine Arabic, Moroccan, words that shaped identity and belonging, each one alive in her memory. The investors muttered amongst themselves, already bored, ready to laugh again. Khalid raised his glass, savoring his dominance. "Don't worry," he said mockingly. "Even I can't speak Arabic perfectly. Let's see if courage feeds you tonight." His companions chuckled. Their voices overlapped in a haze of amusement. But under the table, Amara's hand closed firmly around the edge of her tray, grounding her. She thought of her father in his hospital bed, his voice slurred but smiling as he once recited an old Igbo proverb. "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches." Her lips curved slightly, not in fear, but in quiet resolve. She looked up. The chandelier above them fractured light into prisms, scattering it across her face like armor. The room seemed to tilt toward her, drawn to the stillness that surrounded her body. She could feel every eye on her, some mocking, some curious, some uncertain. Her voice, when it came, was not yet speech, only breath, a whisper in Arabic that only she could hear. "Da yatakallam, fasamt sayakun intisari." Let him speak. Soon silence will be my victory. And as the words touched her tongue, her fear vanished. The waitress disappeared. The scholar returned. The bridge between who she had been and who she had become reconnected with quiet power. Khalid leaned forward, amused but slightly uneasy, as if sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Go on then," he said, forcing a grin. "Let's see what you've got." Amara tilted her head, her eyes calm, her tone steady as still water. The air seemed to thicken around her. The chandeliers burned brighter. Even the violinist held his bow mid-air. The challenge had begun. And across the table, for the first time all evening, Khalid al-Fahim wasn't entirely sure he wanted to hear what she was about to say. The chandelier light fractured above them, scattering gold across polished marble. Every breath in the sapphire room seemed to hesitate, hanging in the charged silence that followed her quiet declaration. Khalid's grin returned, too wide, too bright, a man unwilling to admit his unease. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice dripping with mock delight. "Well, since you're feeling brave," he said, "let's make this interesting." His hand sliced the air theatrically as he turned toward the two men seated beside him. Omar, Mazen. You'll judge Omar al-Rashid, the younger of the two, was a quiet observer, sharp eyes beneath a neatly trimmed beard. He was known for diplomacy, the kind of man who preferred truth to theater. Beside him sat Sheikh Mazen bin Rafi, older, dignified, his posture straight even when seated. His reputation preceded him, a businessman respected for fairness, a rare breed among Dubai's elite. Khalid gestured toward them with a smirk. "These gentlemen were born here. If you speak real Arabic, you'll speak it in our Emirati dialect, not that textbook Egyptian one students learn from YouTube." A ripple of laughter spread through the table. Amara didn't flinch. Her gaze shifted briefly to Omar and Mazen, two witnesses to what was about to unfold, and then back to Khalid. "And if I succeed?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Khalid leaned back, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Then you get the 200,000 I promised." Amara tilted her head slightly. "No," she said. "If I succeed, you'll double it. 400,000, and you'll apologize to every worker you've insulted tonight." Gasps broke out across the room. Someone dropped a fork. The metallic clatter echoed like punctuation. Khalid froze, the smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, faltering into something sharper. Pride tightened his jaw. "She dares," someone whispered from a nearby table. Khalid's pride, his oldest addiction, won the battle against reason. "Fine," he said. 400,000. And if you fail, I'll apologize," she finished. "As you wish." He smiled again, but it was thinner now, brittle around the edges. "Then let the entertainment begin." The violinist in the corner hesitated, unsure whether to play. Waiters paused mid-step, their trays trembling slightly. The restaurant had transformed from a sanctuary of wealth into an arena of quiet anticipation. Amara set her tray down gently on the table beside her. For a moment she closed her eyes, feeling the hum of air against her skin. Her pulse slowed, aligning with memory. The lectures, the languages, the echo of her father's voice reminding her that words could heal or humiliate depending on the hand that wielded them. When she opened her eyes, they were calm. She began to speak. "مساء الخير يا سيدي. اليوم عندنا قائمة خاصة من الأطباق الإماراتية التقليدية." "Good evening, sir. Today we have a special menu of traditional Emirati dishes." Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the room, balanced with the rhythm of Gulf Arabic. Each sound, each inflection, landed perfectly. The subtle kah, the flowing cadence of vowels that marked a native's tongue. Mazen's eyes widened slightly. Omar leaned forward, intrigued. Khalid's confident grin faltered. Amara continued, her tone deepening with quiet elegance. "الهريس المطبوخ ببطء حتى يصبح كالحرير والمجبوس بطعم الزعفران والهيل رمز الضيافة عند أهل الخليج. Hariz, slow cooked until it's like silk, and mahbouz, fragrant with saffron and cardamom, the symbol of Gulf hospitality." Silence swept through the hall. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim in reverence. Her words painted the dishes not as food, but as memory, a language of warmth and history. Each sentence carried the cadence of someone who belonged here, someone who had studied the culture deeply enough to honor it. She's flawless, Omar whispered under his breath. She rehearsed, Khalid muttered, but the doubt in his voice betrayed him. Amara smiled faintly, then shifted gears without warning. Her voice moved from the flowing softness of Emirati dialect to the elevated tone of Fusha, classical Arabic, the language of scholars and poets. Inna al-lughata jasarul karami bayn al-qulub. Language is the bridge of honor between hearts. The phrase echoed like a prayer. Her accent carried no trace of struggle, only reverence. Mazen's lips parted slightly. He recognized the line from pre-Islamic verse, poetry spoken only by those who studied the art. Amara's gaze lifted, her tone shifting again. Now the lilting rhythm of Levantine, then the rolling consonants of Moroccan Arabic, each transition effortless. Her words danced across dialects like a symphony, her intonation flawless, her emotion contained but luminous. It wasn't just language, it was performance, power, grace. The guests were spellbound. Phones rose discreetly from pockets, capturing history in real time. The room that had once sneered at her now watched in awe. Even the waitstaff stood at the edges, eyes wide, pride quietly blooming behind their stoic faces. Khalid, for the first time, seemed smaller, his grandeur dimmed by the weight of her composure. His eyes darted between Mazen and Omar, searching for an anchor of doubt. Omar met his gaze and said softly, "By God, she's fluent." In all of them, Mazen nodded. And not just fluent. She speaks with understanding. Khalid's knuckles tightened around his glass. "It's memorized," he snapped. "She's an actress." Amara didn't respond. She only smiled. Not the smile of a waitress placating a customer, but that of a woman reclaiming her name. Her final words came not in Arabic, but in English, steady and crystalline. "Some languages are learned from books," she said. "Others are learned from life." The words hung between them, a quiet thunderclap. Applause did not come immediately. The silence was too thick, too reverent to break. Only after several heartbeats did it begin, hesitant, then rising like a wave across the restaurant. A sound of acknowledgement, of awe. Khalid didn't clap. His face flushed a deep crimson. Pride burned behind his eyes, colliding with disbelief. He looked around, realizing the attention had shifted entirely, away from him, toward her. Mazen exhaled. "Remarkable," he murmured. "She's showing you respect," Omar added softly to Khalid. "You should do the same." But Khalid couldn't hear them. His world had shrunk to the echo of her words, the melody of mastery that had outshone his arrogance. His fingers drummed the table once, twice, an old habit from his youth when impatience disguised insecurity. Then he slammed his palm down. The sharp crack split the air. "Enough!" he barked. Every head turned. The applause halted instantly. He leaned forward, eyes blazing, the performance veneer stripped away. "Who are you?" The question cracked like thunder, raw and incredulous, not just a demand for identity, but a confession of his own humiliation. Amara didn't move. The corners of her mouth lifted slightly, the faintest trace of calm triumph. The cameras caught it all, the tycoon trembling, the waitress standing tall under the chandelier's unforgiving light. And for the first time in his glittering empire of control, Khalid al-Fahim realized he had just handed the stage, and his dignity, to the woman behind the tray. The echo of Khalid's outburst still quivered in the chandelier crystals. His palm print gleamed faintly on the table's glass surface, the sound of his fury still hanging like smoke in the air. The sapphire room had fallen into stunned silence. The laughter, the arrogance, the hum of quiet privilege. All of it evaporated, leaving only the tension between the man who ruled this place and the woman who had just unseated him. Amara did not move. Her tray rested against her hip, silver catching the light. Every pair of eyes in the room, the waiters, the diners, the silent spectators with their phones raised, watched her. Yet her posture remained unshaken, her voice calm when it finally came. "I am Dr. Amara Charles," she said, "linguistic anthropologist." Oxford University. The words landed like thunder muffled in silk. Khalid blinked, his mouth half open, uncertain whether to laugh or rage. "What?" he said, almost choking on the word. "I studied Arabic dialects for 6 years," she continued evenly, "and I speak 7 languages: English, Igbo, French, Swahili, Italian, Spanish, Arabic." In all its forms, the silence deepened. The chandeliers seemed to hum with it. At one table, a spoon dropped into a bowl with a soft, metallic chime. Then nothing, not even breath. Omar was the first to break the stillness. He leaned back slowly, his gaze fixed on her, a faint smile of admiration curving his lips. Sheikh Mazen's eyes softened, his fingers interlacing as he exhaled a low, approving breath. Around them, the other guests looked at one another, confusion shifting to wonder, wonder turning to awe. Someone began clapping, quietly, uncertainly, then stopped. The sound lingered like the first drop of rain before a storm. Khalid straightened in his chair, face pale under the glow of the chandelier. "You expect us to believe that?" he demanded, his voice sharp but unsteady. "You, a waitress, from Nigeria, working tables in my restaurant, a doctor?" Amara's expression didn't change. "I don't expect belief, sir," she said, "just the decency to listen." Murmurs rippled across the room. The investors who had come to admire Khalid's charm now shifted uneasily, glancing between him and the woman who had dismantled him with words. She continued, her tone unwavering. 3 years ago, I was teaching in Oxford. My father owned a small bookstore in Lagos. The bridge. He had a stroke. Everything we had went to saving him. I left my research, my position, my home. I came here because it was the only place I could find work fast enough to send money back." Her words carried no self-pity, only truth. "I have served men like you for 2 years. Men who think money buys intelligence, who confuse arrogance with strength. But you see, Dr. Al-Fahim," she deliberately used his title, gilded with irony, "dignity isn't currency. It's memory. It's what remains when everything else has been stripped away." Omar's voice cut through softly. "She's right." Mazen nodded, his tone grave. "You've turned this restaurant into a stage for humiliation, Khalid." Tonight, the curtain fell on the wrong actor. Khalid's jaw clenched. "You're defending her." "I'm defending decency," Mazen replied. His voice carried the weight of reputation, the kind that silenced rooms. "You mocked a woman's heritage, her language, her livelihood, and she responded with grace. You owe her what you promised." A murmur of agreement spread like a current. Guests who had laughed earlier now averted their eyes. Some quietly set down their phones, as though realizing what their recordings truly captured. Others whispered to one another about fairness, about respect, about the line between pride and cruelty. Khalid's hand twitched near his wine glass. He looked around, searching for allies, but the laughter that had once protected him had dissolved. His friends avoided his gaze. Even the maitre d' stood motionless, his face unreadable. Amara stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "You said you value integrity, Mr. Al-Fahim. Then honor your word, or prove you have none." Her words cut deeper than any insult could. The camera flashes resumed. Quiet, staccato bursts of light, capturing the unraveling of power. The entire restaurant watched as Khalid's breathing quickened, his mask of confidence breaking under the weight of public judgment. Omar spoke again, this time louder. "You made a promise, Khalid. 400,000. You offered it. The whole room heard you." Khalid glared at him. "This is absurd." "No," Mason replied. "This is justice." Khalid froze. The word hung in the air, final and unanswerable. His face turned red, then pale. He reached into his jacket pocket, his movements jerky now, no longer the smooth gestures of a man in control. He pulled out a checkbook, the pen trembling slightly in his hand. The scratching of ink on paper was the only sound in the room. The check slid across the polished glass table like a verdict. $400,000, he muttered, not looking at her. "There." Amara took the check carefully, folding it once. Then she bowed her head in the respectful manner of Arabic courtesy. "Shukran, lakin al-karama la tushtara." "Thank you, but dignity cannot be bought." The words floated through the air, soft yet thunderous. The meaning hit harder than the translation. Around them, applause began, hesitant, then swelling. Waiters joined in, diners too. Some stood. Cameras flashed like lightning. The applause became a storm. Khalid sat frozen, jaw tight, eyes darting toward the door as though searching for escape. The empire of arrogance he'd built, the one sustained by fear and flattery, began to crack in real time. Omar's approving nod, Mason's measured gaze, the crowd's applause, each sound another fracture in his pride. Amara tucked the check into her apron, not out of greed, but precision. Her dignity remained intact, unshaken. She looked down at him, her expression gentle, not triumphant, just true. "You see, sir," she said softly, "language doesn't just reveal who we are. It reveals who we pretend to be." Khalid's lips parted, but no words came. The room that once amplified his voice now swallowed it whole. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored wall, smaller, older, stripped of grandeur. Mazen rose to his feet. "Dr. Charles," he said respectfully, "your mastery honors us. I would like to speak with you after tonight. Dubai needs voices like yours." Omar nodded. "You've reminded us what culture is supposed to mean." Amara inclined her head in gratitude, her eyes soft. "Thank you, gentlemen." Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen, her steps slow, deliberate, graceful. The crowd parted instinctively, as though giving way to something sacred. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, but the echo of her presence lingered, the waitress who had turned humiliation into history. Behind her, Khalid remained seated, the checkbook still open, his pen lying useless beside it. He could hear the murmurs growing, diners whispering, servers exchanging glances, phones buzzing as the videos went viral in real time. His empire had always been built on reputation. Tonight, reputation was burning. He lowered his head, the chandelier's reflections glinting in his eyes like shattered gold. Around him, the applause continued, a chorus of truth he couldn't silence. And for the first time in his life, Khalid al-Fahim understood the price of arrogance, and how cheaply it had been sold. 6 months later, the morning sun spilled over Dubai's skyline like gold dust, bathing glass towers in quiet brilliance. The city moved with its usual rhythm, chauffeurs waiting by curbs, skyscrapers reflecting the pulse of ambition. Yet somewhere within that glimmering order, the balance of power had quietly shifted. In an office overlooking the Arabian Gulf, Dr. Amara Charles stood before a panoramic window, her reflection framed by light. The plaque on her desk read, "Director of Cultural Relations, Mazen Global Consulting." Her once faded uniform had been replaced by a tailored navy suit. Where she once carried trays, she now carried influence, shaping cross-cultural programs across the Middle East, advising embassies, and championing linguistic equity in corporate spaces. On the shelf behind her sat a framed photograph. Her father smiling weakly in a sunlit garden, her mother beside him, holding a cup of tea. The hospital room was gone now, replaced by the peaceful home care that her new position had made possible. In another photo, a small bookstore's wooden sign read, "The Bridge." It stood rebuilt on the same corner in Lagos, where it had once collapsed. Its shelves filled again with stories in many languages: Igbo, English, Arabic, French. The motto carved into the entrance read, "Language is the bridge of honor between hearts." Amara ran her fingers along the frame, a soft smile touching her lips. The world had turned in ways she hadn't expected, not with revenge, but with restoration. Across the globe, her story had rippled like a tide. Headlines blazed across every platform. Black waitress fluent in 7 languages, humbles Dubai tycoon. The Night Dignity spoke Arabic. Dr. Amara Charles, the voice that silenced arrogance. 15 million views in 48 hours. She had been interviewed on BBC Arabic, Al Jazeera, and the New York Times. Schools invited her to speak. Workers sent her letters from across the world. Waitresses in Paris, drivers in Nairobi, maids in Doha, all saying the same thing. You gave us our voice back. But for one man, the same video told another story entirely. In a corner office of a fading real estate empire, Khalid Al-Fahim sat alone, surrounded by silence. The mahogany walls that once symbolized triumph now echoed with absence. Half his investors had withdrawn. The government contracts had slipped away quietly, one by one. His phone, once a constant chorus of deals and invitations, now stayed dark. On the wide screen before him, a paused video frame showed Amara in her uniform, chin raised, eyes steady, the crowd's applause mid-motion. He pressed play. Shukran, lakin al-karamata la tushtara. Thank you, but dignity cannot be bought. Her voice filled the office, calm, measured, eternal. Khalid leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His once polished confidence had weathered into something softer, almost human. The arrogance was gone, replaced by an ache he couldn't name. For the first time, he saw not the waitress who had defied him, but the woman who had taught him something he had never learned in all his years of wealth. She was right, he whispered into the quiet. Dignity cannot be bought. He replayed the moment again and again, as though searching for redemption in every syllable. That evening, in a university auditorium, Amara stood behind a lectern facing an audience of students, educators, and workers from a dozen countries. The banner above read, "Language as Memory, Building Bridges Through Words." The air buzzed with anticipation. She spoke without notes, her tone gentle, rhythmic, alive with conviction. People see waitresses, janitors, drivers, and think they know their worth, she said. But language taught me something deeper. Every human being carries a library inside them. You may not always hear the books turning, but the stories are there, waiting. A hush filled the room. She looked across the crowd, faces from every culture, every walk of life. Some nodded, some smiled through tears. Never mistake silence for ignorance, she continued. Some voices are just waiting for the right moment to teach the world. The audience rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Students filmed her words, workers clapped until their palms ached. Even the professors, the skeptics, the cynics, stood with respect. Amara bowed her head slightly, humility woven through her pride. In that sound, the applause, the unity, the understanding, she heard something purer than triumph. It was the sound of restoration. As the lights dimmed, she stepped off the stage, her steps quiet but assured. A warm breeze swept through the courtyard outside, carrying the distant hum of the city. the same city where she had once been invisible. Now, when she walked through Dubai's glittering streets, people greeted her not as a server, but as a scholar, a symbol, a voice. Yet she remained the same woman who had once carried trays through the sapphire room, calm, observant, grounded in grace. Above her, the skyline shimmered, the same chandeliers of glass and gold reflected in the city's towers. Only now the light felt different, not cruel, not distant, just human. Amara looked up at the sky, her reflection glimmering faintly in the glass of a passing window. The world at last was listening, and she, steady, serene, unbroken, had nothing left to prove.
Thank you for watching Life in Stories. If Amara's journey moved you, if her courage reminded you that silence can still teach the world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every story you support helps another voice be heard. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of stories.